Hi everybody.
Hello.
So today, I was working on the new Strongfit system programming in place and the seminars that I want to do. And one of the things I want to work is so I had the movement box, right? I don't know if you guys remember, but four corners of the box. So what is a movement? Load, carry, hold, planes of movement, types of contraction, right? So on the planes of movement, actually, I want to add stuff to this
So what do you want to add?
well, because like I talked about, like we have the sagittal, frontal, plane, transversal, and then add the left versus right. I've during the seminar I've added the grip, for example, because I thought it was very important because we are pronated, supinated, and neutral, right? But there's actually things that I think need to be added into the planes of movement. So they won't be planes of movement, so I might have to rename it. But it's anyway, you'll see what I mean by that. Before the end, remind me. I want to talk knowledge versus information because I think it's very important. It's about like find your muscles and why we have
Wait,
to.
I have a role in the podcast
Yes,
now?
you do.
Wow.
Well, you show your legs, obviously,
Oh, yeah.
and then that's not. Yeah, no, it's right
And I
there.
smile whenever needed.
Yeah, exactly. You're so smart.
This is literally my role in this world. So smart.
It's just smart. So, types of contractionary system, but I want to talk about the corner that is the planes of movement, ish. Anyway, so for example, the stance, right? So, CrossFitters do Olympic weightlifting. So you have anything that is a jerk, from a push jerk to a split to a squat jerk, which is a narrow grip, narrow stance for the hands, and the snatch, right? You'll notice CrossFitters do not do that with their feet. They only work with their feet close, but never wide. Right. But the hip work narrow up to wide. There's a range there that is very important, right? Then, of course, we can talk one leg, but even one leg, your hip will be in line straight with the hip.
Yeah, everything because like the thrusters, you kind of doing the same.
Always. It's always very
planes,
narrow, right?
True.
So what we do not work is a wide stance. Look at strongmen. Whenever you pick up a stone, whenever you pick up a sandbag, all that stuff, you're going to have a stance that is wider than the stone. So the bigger the stone, the wider the stance, because you can't go under. You're going to have to go around, right? When you pick up someone wrestling or whatever, your feet has to be outside of what is it you try to pick up. So if you try to pick up something between your legs, like a stone or someone, your feet have to go out. So we know strength is not just with the feet in a narrow position.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to your point that you say that every CrossFitter should do sumo.
Right.
For their back and all of
but
those
I want to
things.
talk about this. So I'm going to decompose it actually in three different things. And we're going to talk about, should you do sumo? Yes. But here comes knowledge versus information. We are in an era of information. And from a very early age, we are taught to obey our teachers, to listen to what they say and basically do as told. That is not knowledge. That is just information. So for example, let's do sumo is correct and incorrect at the same time, because it's not what you do, it's how you do it. I might have said that a few times, and everything is an arch. By now you know me. The point is, whenever I give sumo first, people do a stiff leg deadlift with a wide stance, because they're trying to do a conventional deadlift with wide feet. That turns into a wide stance stiff leg, because you can't you can't deadlift anymore. The reason is because a sumo and a conventional they're called deadlifts, but they're not. A sumo and a conventional have nothing to do with each other. It's not the same movement pattern.
So what would you call one? What would you call the other?
No, so we're going to call it sumo deadlift because everybody calls it sumo deadlift, but it's a deadlift in the sense of the lift is dead because there's no way to load into it and it's off the ground. So that's why it's a deadlift. But the problem is people think deadlift conventional. I'm going to apply that to the sumo, just my same conventional into the wider stance. Turns out, and that's the point, that feet together is a movement pattern, feet wide is another.
I see.
Like, so for example, when you do a push jerk and a snatch, you're not going to tell me you feel the same muscles. It's not the same. Like, right, it's a different type of stabilization it's wider, like it's really almost like a different movement pattern. You see that on the bench, whether you do a narrow grip bench, which is a lot of tricep. When you go super wide, you're going to target the shoulders and the pec here a lot more. Like, but the movement pattern is different, right? So the problem now that I'm having more and more, and this is also a part of the second conversation I want to have today, is the like, well, I did sumo as you said. You told me to do sumo, I'm going to do sumo. No, it's not what you do again, it's how you do it. So I don't want a wide stance, stiff leg. What I want is a sumo deadlift. What does a sumo deadlift look like compared to a conventional? So in order to explain that, I need to talk about the second new movement pattern I want to add to the box, which is the tuck, either posterior tilt or anterior tilt. I always confuse the two, so I'm just going to say like show your ass out or, tuck in, because I can never remember which one is the posterior, which one is the anterior. I know you all know it, it got to my head, I confuse it every time.
It's nice to know that you're also human.
I confuse the two because like I started to go so and then now I learn it incorrectly. It's going to be so hard to unlearn. Anyway,
tuck in or tuck out?
Right, let's do that. Show Latina ass or
exactly.
white girl. So let's go like that. I mean, no, it's me. Right,
wait, now every single podcast we have
Latina ass or white ass. Yeah, exactly.
Some bullshit stuff.
The white girls are gonna hate me when I say.
Hey,
you mean we live in Brazil? Sorry.
Listen,
anyway,
I'm a white girl, so we can say.
Yeah, but your soul is Brazilian,
yeah,
so you have an ass. So you
were
made to be in Brazil.
I feel so at home here.
It's like Paul in Dune, and I mean, like forever. Like, make no mistake, his planet is Arrakis.
Yes.
Make no mistake, Janina's country is Brazil. She's a Latina. She just was born in Holland. That's all.
How did we say it's
You're
like?
White Latina.
It's like you have a lot of white Latinas actually, but transgender, but then for culture.
You're a trans country?
Yeah.
Transcultural?
Transcultural.
Yeah. Anyway.
I want to change cultures.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so posterior tilt, anterior tilt, that has to be part because, and going back to information versus knowledge, at some point people say straight back.
Yeah.
What they never meant tilt in, that tilting in was bad. The problem was people were rounding higher than the lower back, between that area, mid back, lower back. So when people do cat lifting, actually what they round is the mid back. That you don't want to round that, but that doesn't mean you can't tuck in, which is posterior tilt, whatever. You can't tuck in, right? That's fine, as long as you don't round your mid back. So the problem with straight back is that they were trying to tell people don't round your mid back. But over time, and that's people for you, they went from, because the idea was neutral spine. A rounded mid-back is not a neutral spine. But an overarched lower back is not a neutral spine either. You start to put a lot of pressure on the L5, which is a mistake, right? So a rounded T-spine is not a neutral spine.
That's kind of what I was going to talk about. It's like, what I was going to ask is like, are people maybe also confusing like a rounded back with like a rounded, like not engaging the lats? Because if you're tucked in and you engage the lats, you are completely straight.
Yeah, but so what happened is they relax the T-spine.
Yes, exactly.
And then they arch their lower back.
Yeah.
Because they want to have their shoulders on top of their hips, right? And so they think that's what a straight back is. And this is going to be the theme today, is people try to cheese the boss all the time. They go like, oh, I have a straight back because my shoulder on top of my hips, and then I just do that. So what people do is they have rounded T-spine slightly because they're not engaging the lats. And we're going to talk about this, by the way, because that's depressing the shoulder blade. That's the third thing I want to add to the box. So they basically either elevate, the shoulder blade instead of depressing, whatever. Their T-spine is incorrect, and so they arch their back to put their shoulder on top of their hips. But now, you're not in neutral spine at all because your T-spine is in the wrong spot, and so is your lower back. Right,
that puts a lot of pressure.
Yeah, that's going to fuck up your L5. But so we went from don't round your mid back, keep your back straight, to overarch your lower back while your T-spine is forward, but which allows you, and that just fucks up your hips. By the way, most of you don't have back pain, you have hip pain, but that's another problem. But that's because your positioning is incorrect, because trying to look the part is not being the part. So instead of having a neutral spine, which you find through bracing correctly, they're trying to look the part, which means, oh, where are my shoulders in the mirror?
Yeah.
So my shoulders are there, so I need to rock back. And how do I rock back? I arch my back. Look, my back is super straight, but it's past neutral, which is just as good one way as the other. What you have to have good movement is a neutral spine. So, for example, what does that apply to the sumo? Because when I'm in a sumo position, my legs are wide, I'm going to use a lot more legs, right? And hips than on a conventional where I use more back. Right, the thing with this is it's going to lit up your hammies, the sumo, in a good way, right, if you do it correctly. But the problem if you start to tilt out like a Latina, right, is that you are stretching your hammies in a movement that is already going to lit them up. So what do you think happens? You put tremendous pressure on your hammies, which is very poor leverage, and your sumo either sucks or hurts you. That's because you're tilting out, where actually on a sumo, you see the best sumo, they're in neutral spine, but actually they tuck in order to brace properly on the sumo because it's a different hip position. It's actually almost like a tuck in. Not a tuck in the sense you think. Like bracing properly will make you have your hips toward the tilt that they tell you is a bad idea. But then if you engage your lats properly because you're going to be more upright than on a conventional, and you depress your shoulder blade and you engage your lats correctly, your spine is completely neutral. It's very tight from the mid-back perspective, which doesn't round. And now having your hips tucked in, as in bracing properly for the sumo, allows your hips to be closer to the bar. And that's good leverage.
Yes.
The closer your hips are to the bar, the better the leverage. You can't do that on a conventional deadlift because your knees are in the way and because you have a narrow stance. So that puts a different leverage. The great thing about the sumo is because you open up your feet, is your hips can be closer to the bar. So that's what you want. You actually, on the sumo, you're not trying to pull up with your back as much as on the conventional, even though the conventional you're supposed to press your legs down, but you get the idea. There's going to be less shoulder movement on the sumo. It's going to be more your hips going forward, not up, forward. Actually, to do that, you cannot arch, because if you arch, you're putting all the stress on your hammies and the leverage is getting killed.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Right. But so there are two parts to this. Yes, I want people to work on sumo, but I want them to work on sumo correctly with the thinking that it's a hip movement going forward. That's going to require its own bracing. And the bracing will take you away from tilting out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Well,
that is okay. That is actually a neutral spine. As long as your T-spine is in the right place, we're good.
Well, it's if you talk about planes of movement, that could also like be a sandbag squat done correctly or stuff like that.
Yeah, so the sandbag squats is a little bit wider than most squats.
Yes.
Some powerlift squats are wide. They look almost like sumo because they like to use the hips more than the quads. So there are different stances.
You can use different movements if you use that plane of movement.
But they're all different.
Right? Yeah.
Right, so it's not technical plane of movement, but you get the idea. Yeah. I want to use a different stance. You have to be good at different stances because you're going to realize it's not just a stance that changes. Your bracing changes, the way you use your hips changes. It changes the movement pattern. The wider you are, the less back you put, the more your hips are under you, which allows you to drive forward. So some people like to rely on quads, some people like to rely on back. That's leverage dependent. That doesn't change the fact that you should work on stances. It changes, but not with the same movement pattern. Each stance will have a different movement pattern. 1, 2, 3, right? And the wider you are like this, the closer your hips to the bar, the more leverage you have. Now, you lose, by doing that, you put tremendous pressure on the hammies and hips, and you lose the back. So you might lose some strength depending, like for me, for example, I'm always going to suck at sumo because I don't have legs, but I have a very strong back. So the sumo is not good. That doesn't mean I don't work at it because it's a great exercise for me. And if you want a nice ass, the sumo is awesome.
I mean...
Proof.
That's why I do it.
Exactly. Let's be honest. Who cares about 200 kilos?
Fuck yeah.
It's just 200 kilos means nicer ass, so therefore 200 kilos. Hey, but priorities.
Exactly, priorities. It's all about integrated into a new culture. You know, you have to respect the cultures.
And if you respect the Brazilian culture, you respect big legs, big ass. That's for sure.
But it reminds me of what you mentioned, like maybe 1.5 years, 2 years ago. It's like the antennas, like your hands as the grip, like the different grips, and then your feet as also antennas, and then
to the ground,
to the stance.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's very interesting.
So the second part, speaking of that, on the hands. was the grip.
Yeah.
So, for example, I always say there's, pronated, neutral, supinated, but there's also finger strength versus holding, close grip versus
What?
whatever. Like, this is why I can have a conversation with her. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I saw your smile. Like, you just don't want to say because it's a podcast. But so, yeah, people that are just listening, you're safe. Don't worry. If you're watching the video, you're not. Anyway, finger strength, close grip versus open grip. Those are very different types of strength for the hand. The reason I had such a strong grip is because I did years of jiu-jitsu with the gi. So I developed the grip strength. Now, you think the finger strength. You think the finger strength doesn't matter because you all hold grip, or basically it's about a close grip, but that's not true. For example, if you lift a stone, anybody who's lifted a heavy stone, not the light ones that you all do for 1,000,000 reps, I'm talking about a real man job, so a big ass heavy stone, you're gonna have to, your grip is gonna be the palm of your hand, but it's gonna be how hard you can squeeze the stone with your fingers. So open hand strength all the way to open palm is actually a very important grip. There's a way to do that is, it's what they call a pinch grip, right? Is you grab a rubber 25 kilo plate and then you hold it like this. And you're gonna see that this has nothing to do with a close hand grip. Those are not the same muscles. The more you open your fingers, the more your hand will thank you over time, but not right away.
So that's the hand grip instead of the finger grip.
Right.
Which you developed by jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu, just jiu-jitsu.
Whatever.
You player.
Whatever. You think what? By grabbing women? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I don't know what you were doing for all those years.
Whatever. Actually, you do. But anyway. So you finger strength is very important. So you have exercises like that. For example, you take it's simple. You put your hand in a bucket of sand or rice and open hand and you start turning. You start doing and you start malaxing. You're going to see how tired your hand is. Close grip means more forearms. Open hand means the muscles of the hand. And the problem with that is that's a lot of small muscle. They need a tremendous amount of volume and time to get strong. So the problem with grip strength is the close grip like this. We have exercises. You can develop that 6 months, a year, a little bit more, but you can get there. Hand strength, that's start now because it's going to take you a fucking long time.
Yeah.
People, when they start jiu-jitsu, go home with a T-Rex. I mean, because their hands, their fingers get so tired. That finger strength is going to give you so much, but it destabilizes your entire forearm if you have a close grip versus open grip, to the point that you can develop elbow pain. So that's why all the types of planes of movement are so important. Oh yeah. Anybody that has, for example, we all close. When was the last time you developed your strength opening your hand? So
how would you
put your hand in a bucket of rice and then you open, close, open, close, open, close. Or you put rubber band around your fingers and you just open. That's the best way you can do it. If you type a lot and you have the carpal tunnel syndrome, the best way is put a rubber band around your fingers and open up like a flower. Or put your hand in a bucket of rice, I guess it's better than sand at first, and just open and close your hand.
Just that.
Yeah. Do that for 30 seconds.
Yeah, I've never
you
done
will
it.
burn everywhere. It's actually, those are crazy exercises. You want another exercise? You take they actually sell it. It looks like a fucking rocket, which means there's a ball attached to a cylinder, and at the end there's some types of wings. You put the wings into the sand and you turn one way and the other. So as you turn like this, it's open hand strength, but then there's a twist because hand strength, you're thinking closing and opening. But what about turning? There's a grip to be able to turn clockwise and counterclockwise. By the way, if you do that a lot, you're going to realize how much you feel your pec and your rear delt. There's another important part of strength that we don't do. So people are so focused on doing their main workout and doing 6 of them a day, and yet they don't spend any time on, for example, grip strength or stance, and the importance of getting your hips strong. So we all do narrow and one-legged with pistols, and yet you don't work a wide stance. How weird is that? That's always been my issue with CrossFit. From the beginning, is the choice of exercises are not obeying a certain logic.
Yeah.
We need to change that, right? So for the grip, it's going to be simple. When we talk about the stance, before we talk about the shoulder blade, I want to talk about something else that I saw with a number of my clients lately. At some point, I said, find your hammies. This has gone the way that straight back went. Straight back started, don't round your mid spine, and now basically people are such straight back, they're overarching into everything.
Mm-hmm.
When the physio start to say use your legs, right? That's turning into people overarching their back and letting up their back on fire because they have the wrong sequential idea about movement, and their movement pattern sucks because they're trying to force into a place where it shouldn't be because there's no subtlety in the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, find the hammies ended up in exactly the same place.
Yes.
What is happening now is in order to find the hammies, people are arching in order to stretch them, to feel them. That's never what I meant.
Yeah,
I
well,
never
that
meant
sounds
it
like
for
a
this to
that,
happen.
that sounds like a very dangerous idea to stretch a
but
muscle to feel them under heavy load.
But that's
how
what
you-
happened. You're cheesing the boss by doing that. What you
Yeah.
did is, oh, I'm going to feel my hammies. So then we see the arch, and then we see people staking their ass out as much as they can to stretch the hammies fully to find the hammies. That works during your warm-up. That cannot be applied to a heavy weight. That's why I don't want you to warm up finding your hammies anymore, because to 80 to 90% of my people now, all I see is people stretching their hammies. That's not what I meant when I say find your hammies. I meant use your hammies also, but that didn't mean stretch them to the point that right now the reason people have back pain is because no, you didn't find your hammies. You irritated your hammies because you found a pattern where you actually stretch them a lot, which meant you feel them a lot, and then you took that into heavy weights. What could go wrong?
Yeah, well.
And that's knowledge versus information. So yes, I guess again, if I'm going to blame the physios for keep a straight back, then I have to be blamed for hammies, for the back pain that some of my people have now, because I guess I should not have said find your hammies in that sense. Like I was expecting people to, because I made so many podcasts on constraint versus objectives that, and I was trying to help. Remember, it's finding your hammies now. So now we are at a stage though where people are just stretching their hips to feel the hammies, which is exactly
so
what I
it turned
didn't
into
want.
another objective.
Yes, it did.
What
So
you're saying.
you know what? Forget find your muscles. We're going to work on movement patterns.
Yeah. Well, yes, and I think it goes in hand with like getting, if you shy away too much from heavy weights or like all out efforts, you're gonna have to focus on something else because
Exactly.
I
agree completely.
I actually
It's a very good point.
when
Got you.
what is happening?
Yeah, I know.
No,
No, it's a great point.
I think constraint versus objective, it balances out people who are over objective. Like for example,
Yes.
like
Yes,
anybody
but you
who
can take
does
it too far.
you can take it too far into constraint. You still need an
No,
objective.
you're not taking you're not taking too far into constraints. Well, yeah, in the sense of there's no more objective, so there's no more testing.
Yes.
Right. Because the idea was building versus testing a bit, right? So you can't take constraints too far. It's just, but what you mean is there's too much building, not enough testing.
Yeah.
So at some point you don't even know where you are. You know where I see that on the warm up. So that's a mistake with find your muscles. Like honestly, that I'm gonna walk it back because what we see now is people that are finding their muscle during the warm up, and what I see now is people specializing in warm ups.
Yes, and I also
a lot of the coaches that I see now are specialists of the warm up, so they can feel their pecs, they can feel their hammies, they can do this. Yeah, you just can't lift anymore.
Yeah, but they also
you're really good at warming up.
Yes, exactly, and they equal that to a win, to
Yes.
a point where that is the win.
Yes.
It's like, okay, but at some point, when are you training then, and when are you testing,
and when are you lifting heavy shit?
Well, yes, exactly.
Because now I see too many that are now specialists of warming up.
Yeah.
Which means like your max is, let's say, 200. You're really good at lifting 140.
Yeah.
And you feel the pecs, and you feel the hammies, and you feel everything. Yeah, and guess what? When you get to 200, your form is shit because lifting 60 kilos or 100 is not lifting 200. Like, for example, form breaks down at 95, 96%, right? But at 90%, you know exactly what your form is. You do not know what your form is at 70% because you can still cheat. At 70% of a 1 rep max, you can, on a squat, you can good morning it a little bit. You can do this. You can find your glutes at 70%. You cannot do that at 90% plus because at 90%, everybody has to do it. Like, if the movement pattern is incorrect or fuck with, you're just not lifting the weight. So, but the problem is that 90%, that weight goes down over time. If you specialize at 70, 75%, that 100% is going to keep coming down,
Yeah.
which means that 75% is going to have to coming down.
Yeah.
Like strength needs to be worked constantly, all year long, all the time. That's a podcast basically.
Yeah.
We train hard for strength all year long.
And one of the things that stuck with me the most from the first seminar first Strongfit seminar I saw is when you were teaching the sandbag squat to someone's squat, and you were making them squat for repetitions. When they got tired and wanted to drop, it's like, now keep squatting, and that's when you found the right squat for that person. That to me was one of the like epiphany moments of like coaching someone, and also like for yourself, is because like you need to go to that point where you're struggling to actually find your squat, because then the verbal way of formulating the movement for yourself goes away, and you're just putting output, and then you start to see what your body actually does instead of your mind.
Right. But then the problem also is that then people squatted 4 reps to fatigue, to find their squat, but could not apply it to strength. Because strength is not important.
Yeah.
That's not true. Strength is the best way to build resilience, right? So
it is.
So by the way, how often should you test strength? Should you one rep max? Twice a year. Maybe 3 times, no more than that. Most of the time you should do 3s. You should do sets of 3s. So you can test your strength on a 3 rep max. But the singles, that's twice a year, maybe 3 times max.
Yeah. It's extremely taxing.
Yeah, it's very, very taxing. It's not just taxing on your soft tissue. It's taxing on your mental capacity to generate that power, outburst. But it's also very taxing on your technique. Because again, at 96%, form will break down. So when you go for a single, you're going to, as your form breaks down, I don't want you to remember that. So that's why we're going to do triples. And we're going to stop always short of technique breaking down completely, because that's not what I want you to remember. I want you to do heavy, but with good form always. Yeah. And competition happens what happens, but then we're going to go back to the gym and teach you good form again, so that it's integrated in your system.
Oh, once you go for a max rep, that's where you show actually the discipline you had mentally in your prep. Yeah. Because if you lifted consistently well with the right tension, and you were disciplined in your own mind to stick with what you were doing in your 1 rep max, once your mind goes to that murderous intent, then your body can show what you are.
So a competition is really the culmination of your training. And that's why combination in that sense is good, because it shows what you did in training or didn't do, what you need to fix, all the things that you need to do.
Or the stuff you didn't do, which is actually very valuable. Like that's always the things you are looking for in your training, is like, what am I not doing?
Yeah.
And what am I doing wrong?
And so that aspect of testing is very important for that. But the feel your muscle, like I see coaches that have used that for business, because people, like we have a lot of clients that have no idea where they are in space.
Explain that a bit more, please.
What do you mean with that? What is called kinetic awareness. If they don't know where they are in space, like a good athlete, when you sprint, for example, you know where your leg is, you know when you're about to touch the ground and everything. A lot of people, because they never train or very little or whatever, they don't know where they are in space. Like they can't control their body. So when you do gymnastic movement, they look very clumsy. It's because they don't know where their feet are. They have no control. They have no kinetic awareness of where they are in space. It's very striking with some people. So the idea is, how do we help them? I think helping them through feeling the muscle is actually wrong, because I don't think the idea is wrong, but I think the practical of it leads to people going in the wrong places. For example, Elden Ring. There's so many videos online. But you know what most of those videos are? Is how to one-shot the boss, how to use the best sorcery, the best incantation, the best weapon. So basically how to cheese the boss, how to spend the least amount of work on fighting the boss. You know what there's very little, I haven't seen a video of, is here are the movement pattern of that boss. You need to count 1, 2, 3, 4. Look, when it's there, you should roll this way or whatever. There's actually very, very few of those videos that are actually the most valuable for Elden Ring, because each boss has a set of movements that you have to learn. So they want the best incantation, so they never have to learn the boss's pattern. But what you have to do is to see the movement pattern of that boss, his set of moves, so that you avoid the attack and you know when to hit back.
And
that's playing the game.
And even maybe adapt some of their strengths.
Exactly.
In your own play.
Exactly. That is playing the game. finding the best sorcerer and everything. They're just chasing the boss. When we say feel your muscle, that's why we end up with people. They are arching their back to stretch the hammies because they think stretching the hammies is feeling the hammies.
Wins.
And so when they go on the deadlift, they fuck up their back because that's the improper movement pattern.
Yeah, so it's not feeling the muscle that's the problem. It's taking it in a way out of context to see that as a win.
Exactly.
That is the problem.
Information versus knowledge. People do not value knowledge anymore. That's not what the win is. The win for people is to get more information.
Yeah.
It's volume versus intensity.
Yeah, that's
intensity
what I was thinking
is knowledge.
About too, yeah.
Information is volume. Now that we are bombarded with volume of information, the win is more information, not knowledge, information. So what they want is they want the extra stuff. So that's why I have people saying, explain to me the deadlift before a deadlift. It's like, well, I don't know how you deadlift, so how do you want me to explain to you your deadlift? Here are some ideas about the pattern. You see that a lot with white belts in jiu-jitsu, where they go like, where do I put my foot? Well, a black belt, if it tells you the truth, will go, well, it depends what the guy is.
Yeah, but also at some point,
you have to start with
you have to also sometimes go here. Right. Because if you're like, you mean there's a balance between those two things,
but there's also the white belt syndrome. Or white belt always asks you questions because that's functional segregation. Is you have to decompose the stuff at first to say, look, you start by doing this, so that the person understands the movement that is going to be required later on. Mm-hmm. But that is not the movement. The map is not the place. So the white belt syndrome is a world where everybody's given maps. And before they go to the place, they want a bigger map and a bigger map and a good map, so that they spend less time in the place looking for stuff. So that's what they want, the number one incantation, because when they fight, they want to spend less time fighting because they want the easy stuff, and they are confusing information versus knowledge in that sense. Yeah. So that makes people very lazy. And so what I've seen with Feel Your Muscle is that we are turning people lazy. That's why they become specialists of warm-ups. Warm-up is up to 70, 75%, and the work starts. People stop short now because, it felt good. I'm like, great. Like, yes, heavyweights don't. I agree, but you also don't get stronger that way. Yeah. So now they have that mentality of that facility. That's French. That I want the easy stuff. I want the stuff that feels good. I want, and that's the West right now. Yeah. But you can see that's information versus knowledge. What people want is more information. They want the map. They want the place. You know why? Because the place, when you're there, it smells different. It's maybe tastes different for the food. Maybe there's different noises. Yeah. Like there's almost like a cognitive dissonance when you're in a new place because you don't understand the culture. There's a lot of stuff, but the map is awesome. Yeah. The map, it looks gorgeous. It's that map on Google. You don't have to experiment anything. You just see it in the comfort of your own home. That's easy. That's practical.
That sounds to me like how you can describe a beautiful growth of anxiety. Because exactly. if anxiety is looking into the future or looking in what's coming, so course. If you have a big map of what is coming, but you're never going
but imagine the problem with OnlyFans now for the young men growing up is they're going to see those gorgeous women naked. Yeah, but a gorgeous woman naked, you masturbate too. That's not sex.
Yeah,
because you're going to make all those, she's gorgeous, and the first woman you're going to have sex with, that's not her. Unless you're paying, that's not that girl, right? And when you have sex, guess what? She's not exactly like you are. She is in your fantasy because she's not going to obey you. So now you have to, and you have to do things to her. And suddenly, like getting hard is a problem because you're you don't know what's next. And when you start to have sex, no, she's not going to feel like your hand. So you're going to go like, what is this? And then there's a connection with
and you're going to make mistakes, which is going to throw you off.
Exactly, and then it throws her off, and maybe she's not comfortable either because that's her first time or. In today's world, I doubt it. But so anyway,
calling women sluts.
No, I didn't. I just said catch them young. That's all I said. Anyway, legally, obviously. You have like
it works.
Worked for me. You can imagine how terrible. That first time is already awkward and can be difficult. Yeah. Sometimes it's great, but most of the time, the first time is, let's put it this way, it's not easy. It might be great and might be a great moment because you love the person, but it's complex. The first time is always complex. OnlyFans is
Plus-
going to make it so much harder because there's too much information of something you know nothing about,
Yes.
because you know nothing about sex until you have sex with an actual human being, and your fleshlight doesn't work, doesn't count as a real person. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the same. And so when they ask you about like all that information about the deadlift and you're learning about the thing, right, when you're going to actual deadlift, it has nothing to do with what you pictured in your
Well,
head. And so now
yeah.
you're going to feel awkward lifting, and you're going to try, oh, he said find your hammies. And now you're stretching. It's like, oh yeah, I feel my hammies. No, you're stretching. Of course you feel your hammies. You're overstretching your hammies. Now when you go heavy, you're going to irritate the shit out of them, and now you have back pain, because you have hip pain, and now you're in trouble. But because when the deadlift was like, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't understand what I'm feeling, you went to what the guy told you, which is feel your hammies.
Yeah.
And now, or you do that on the bench, and then you tear your pec.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't want that's why you don't hear me talk about it. I don't want to feel your muscles anymore. What I'm going to teach now is movement patterns.
Yeah.
So what I want to, and I think in a way it's a very Strongfit thing to do, is I want to teach balance and feel your muscles ended up out of balance.
So if I concluded correctly, feeling your muscles should be a consequence of lifting heavy instead
Lifting
of the
correctly.
intent.
Lifting correctly.
Instead of being the intent of
Right,
lifting.
exactly. It should never be the intent. It should only be as you said, a consequence, a side effects of lifting correctly.
An indication.
Which is
of
what I
lifting
meant
correctly.
of, well, like when I said like find your hammies, I meant change the movement patterns until the hammies is found, for example, on a deadlift. But that turned into I'm going to change the movement pattern to feel the hammies.
Or like that they get sore, not maybe
Or
feel
I
them
meant
in
like
the
hammies
movement.
are necessary to lift correctly.
Yes.
Right, but they shouldn't be the primary focus, which I guess I should have explained. But anyway, it doesn't matter, because no matter how I explain it, we're going to end up in the same place of information versus knowledge. So no more feel your muscles. Now we're going to go at movement patterns. We're going to take the box and teach that proper movement pattern. So different stances will force you to have different movement patterns by bracing differently and everything, which will teach you each better. We're going to teach you to play the game, and we're going to stop teaching to cheese the boss.
Well, actually, maybe that's the way to describe Strongfit. I mean, that's the best I've heard so far, teaching balance.
Yes.
In life, mental
Yes.
health, physical
exactly.
health. If I just describe
That's what
it,
resilience is.
they're the same thing, but
this
like,
is
you
what
know what I mean?
resilience is. Again, I'm having that conversation
Teaching
with people who
resilience
think
and balance.
resilience is to not fall, is to fall less. That is not true. Resilience is to learn to get back up. It is not to fall. That is not up to you. Life is bigger than you. The point of resilience is to get back up faster, stronger. That's resilience, not falling. That is a Western syndrome of thinking you can control the world.
Yeah.
You don't.
So what will the box look like now?
Then there's the last part that I wanted to add to play on movement, which is shoulder blades. So shoulder blades are an excessively important part, obviously, of the upper back, of the upper body, because it controls the back. So what we have on there is really, it can protract, retract, elevate, or depress. So when I say retract, most people do this. So they move their shoulders. No, what I mean by that is you're supposed to retract your shoulder blades by using muscles, not moving your shoulder. Just squeeze everything together. Then protracting, you can't do that. So you're going to have to spread your lats. See, I don't move my shoulder, I just spread my lats. So the point of the shoulder blades should move through the back muscles. Don't move your shoulders. Retract by using your traps, right? Protract by using your lats. Then elevate, that's using your trap, that's easy, but then depress. If you depress your shoulder blades correctly, which is not driving your shoulders down because you're going to do it forward, it's depress your shoulder blades this way. It's going to make your chest pop up if you do it correctly. But depress, don't make your chest pop up. Depress your shoulder blades. Back to the same thing. If you do this, you're going to feel that your lats are activated right away. So this is what I don't see on the bench press. This is what I don't see on the pressing. I see people, so for example, on the strict press, you see them all doing this, which is for people just listening, they lift their elbows up to the side and then press. What they're doing really is they're doing a side delt, raise with the bar and then press. What they're doing is they're elevating the shoulder blades because they don't know how to depress it. Actually, when you press, you should always almost have the elbows coming under the hand because that's proper leverage, and that's depressing the shoulder blade, and then you stay in that position, which takes the stress off the shoulder completely. So more shoulder pain comes from the fact that they're incapable of finding balance between depressing your shoulder blades and elevating. They go 90% elevation of the shoulder blade all the time, and now they're not strong enough to depress. So they always elevate. They always take their shoulder from a stable position down with the pecs and the lats into the trap. And so forget the muscles. The point is you elevate the shoulder blades too much. You have not learned to depress the shoulder blade. But when it comes to pressing, any pressing, you need to depress the shoulder blade. When it comes to rowing weight, you need to depress the shoulder blade. Depression of the shoulder blades is an excessively important part of movement that no one works on. People retract, but don't depress. It's not the same. Retracting is you're basically putting your shoulders together on the back. Depressing is you driving not the shoulders, the shoulder blade down, which is not the same. Forget the shoulders. Bring your shoulder blades together, bring your shoulder blade down, up. By the way, this is raising your shoulder. For the one watching, this is elevation of the shoulder blade. There's a difference between the shoulders moving and the shoulder blade moving. I want you to just elevate your shoulder blade without moving your shoulder, depressing your shoulder blades without moving your shoulder, protracting without moving the shoulder, retracting without moving the shoulder. It is not a shoulder movement, it's a shoulder blade movement. And people have terrible control of their shoulder blades. That's where most of you have shoulder pain from.
So where do you think the cause comes from? Because if you see, for example, strongman press, they always very depressed shoulder blades and they kind of press here. But when I started lifting weights, I noticed that for the T-spine, I mean, maybe it was my problem, but T-spine takes a lot of, not flexibility, but mobility at some point to be able to have strength here.
It's because you use a barbell from the beginning. So barbell, it's easy to, you just move your shoulders up. You don't even move the shoulder blade up. You don't elevate the shoulder blade, just elevate the shoulders.
And you think it's also because of the daily activation, like you said?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Everybody is always moving the shoulders, but not the shoulder blade. Most people can't move their shoulder blades. They're completely stuck. I know because I've seen it on assessment time and time again. People move their shoulders all the time, not their shoulder blade. And the barbell allows you to basically push press and move your shoulder up or to the side or wherever, but the shoulder blade themselves get stuck. So people have learned to raise their shoulder up, somewhat elevate the shoulder blade, but depressing, there's no strength there whatsoever. So it's always retracting the shoulder blades and up. That's what they work on. It's never protracting and down, which is the base of pressing. So that's why you'll see the strongman like leaning back too, because then you can use your pec, you can use your triceps better, and your elbows is under the hand, which is better leverage. So there's an entire movement there that uses the back to the nth degree, which is what you want on pressing. Whether the bench or the overhead, it doesn't matter. You need to have all that back engaged, and that's in with depressed shoulder blade, not elevated, not moving your shoulders up. There's no socket for the shoulder, but I'll use the expression. If you always lift moving your shoulder, you're taking them out of that socket, out of that safe position, and then you stress them with weight. So of course it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt because you can't move your shoulder blades anymore. That's the issue, right? So that's something I'm going to put also in a plane of movement. So we're going to stop with feel your muscle. We're going to go with like feel your movement pattern.
So what is it going to, it's not going to be a box anymore. So what shape is it
No,
going
I'll do a
to
box, but I'll do like an extra stuff on the box. I'll cheat. Because the box, there's a list always on the box.
But it can't become a star? No, because you need 6.
Honey, let it go. That's my job.
Okay.
You're not going to teach the seminar. I am, so
no,
I'm going to stick with my box.
Not going to teach
I'm going to stick with my box. I'll just find a way to make it look cool.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry about that. That's my job. Thank you.
Well, but they're going to be 6 points basically.
No, there's going to be 4. There's just going to be a different list because one of them is movement pattern. I'm just going to put it in movement patterns, which I explained at the beginning of the podcast.
But
no, there's not going to be 6 points. No.
But maybe people had that question.
No, they don't. It's my box.
No, but I mean, maybe people had the question that it's gonna look or like it's gonna be more points
only
because
the
you
Dutch
said
ones.
Add. So that's why I was just clarifying.
Only the Dutch ones. Yes, I'm gonna add more stuff in the corner.
It's not a bad question in my opinion.
Anyway,
you know what? I should go back to sitting here and just smiling.
Where was I? Right. So that's going to be part of the. So I guess also that's going to be during the seminar I'm creating, because I'm creating the whole Strongfit system I want to teach now. I'll do a module, by the way, online for that as well. But there's going to be a huge emphasis on balance of movement patterns, because I think that's the only way people are going to learn. Is you have to stop, for example, working with your feet together all the time, because after a while it's always the same shit. You start to make connections that you shouldn't be making, because that's not true. And if you open your feet, you're going to see that what you thought was correct isn't. It's masturbating, watching porn all the time. Well, guess what? Real life, it doesn't quite work like that. Is you have an image in your head now of what sex is that is incorrect. It's a little bit the same thing or lifting. If you always with your feet together, you don't understand how hips work, because you have a very limited view of the situation. So I want we're going to teach balance and movement patterns. So that's why I'm going to love the strongman movements. For example, it's because like a sandbag, you have to squeeze it, for example, but depending on the size of the sandbag, you're going to have to lift somewhat differently. Same thing for the stance. So all that is going to change as we go. Sorry, I'm getting eaten by the bugs. But so I think that's what Strongfit is going to be. It was always about balance, but I think I'm going to put a greater
resilience and balance. I think that's definitely the words we are.
Even resilience can be seen. For example, maybe resilience is balance too, because maybe it's an arch. Maybe resilience is an arch in the sense of people try not to fall, but that's a mistake. You cannot learn without falling. So maybe you need to fall and fail hard, just have the resilience to go back up fast and powerfully every time. Well, that to me is a stronger human being. It's not someone who doesn't fall. That's where I think people are mistaken. I think a strong human being is someone who takes the risk to fall and fail hard, but has the strength to get back up fast.
And learn from the mistake.
But that's getting back up.
Yeah. It's a consequence of...
It's a consequence of getting back up is you learn from the mistake. So
otherwise you don't get back up.
You need to build both. You need to build the capacity to get back up, but also the capacity for the balls to fail. And that's why I see most issues now is people don't want to fail anymore. But then you're never going to learn. That's not how the body is created or the system is created. So maybe there's an arch about to build a strong resilience. It's not just how hard you work at getting back up. It's how hard you work at making mistakes and learning from them. Not making the same mistake over and over and over again, but at the same time, taking the risks that could. So you're not going to willingly make the mistake, but you're taking the risk toward the mistake. And if that happens, you go back up. That's resilience.
Yeah, and it's like the dial you had with like anxiety on one side, depression on one side, same thing for autism and schizophrenia.
But it's a hero struggle.
Like the balance is being in between, like going this way and then going this way.
It's a hero struggle. Like there is no, in any stories, there is no hero who has not struggled. So he has to fail. It's Luke versus Darth Vader. It's all that.
Yeah.
You have to. He's the only one. But even him, he got his ass kicked at the beginning. That's how he grew stronger. One Punch Man.
Saitama. Yeah, I was gonna say the name like.
You know that's actually a place in Tokyo.
No shit.
Yeah. It's a neighborhood called Saitama. That's where he's from. Anyway, because Japanese names are based on either profession or where they come from. Anyway, there's a balance there that has to be found, an arch on everything. So that's what we're going to teach. We're going to teach a balance of movement pattern. That's going to include the grip. That's going to include the stance. That's going to include all that. And I think out of that, people will find themselves better. But we have to, that's a myotome idea. We have to, I'm going to stop isolation. I'm going to stop feeling the muscle. It's all going to be about balance of movement patterns.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think Strongfit was always that because it was using the principles to find yourself, not find yourself and then like there's no thing as finding yourself without the principles. Like I mean, finding your muscles, finding your movement, finding your.
But even finding the muscles was still within the context of the movement pattern.
Yeah.
But the problem is
principles and
the problem is people take the context away because of an overload of information that is constant in our culture now, which makes you always go toward more. What the success look like, more. So the success look like with lifting now, it's not lifting more weight, I know more. That's the
Right.
CrossFitters at first. They were like, yeah, you lift more than me, but I can run longer. I can do more of this. I can do more. And then the CrossFitter love to shove that in everybody's face. Like, my warm-up is your workout and all that shit. I can do more than you.
Yeah.
But that's the culture we're in. And now it's with information, but not knowledge. Because knowledge...
That's a curse of our generation
Yeah.
too.
Yes, it will
Right?
be. Yes, it will be,
It's
especially
knowing
with
too
TikTok,
much,
and that is
yeah.
just more. Anyway, so that's going to be what I wanted to talk about today, because that's going to be the Strongfit system. It's going to
And
be the balance of
finger
movement
strength
patterns.
is important.
Hmm?
We're gonna teach that, and finger strength is important.
Always was, but that's balance. Whatever. I'm supposed to be the bad one. It's because you don't know her. Anyway.
Yes, better.
See you
It's
guys
better that
next
you
week.
don't know me. Ciao.